people's princess is dead across the country, across the world. Millions are trying to come to terms with the awful tragedy of Diana's untimely death.
It was January 1997, a new year, a new chapter. For Diana, Princess of Wales, life had changed forever. She was no longer a wife, no longer bound by the cold walls of her marriage to Prince Charles. She was, finally, free.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
But freedom came at a heavy price. For years, Diana had tried to hold her marriage together. She gave her heart, her youth, her trust. And yet, she lived in the shadow of another woman. She once said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." She was right. Charles's love for Camilla never faded, and Diana could feel it every single day. She left Charles because she longed for something so simple to be loved, truly and fully. She wanted warmth, but instead found distance. She wanted a partner, but instead found silence. The truth is, Diana's courage to walk away was born from 7 painful realities. Charles's affair with Camilla, an open wound that never healed, the loneliness of living in palaces filled with people, but no comfort, a clash of worlds. Her heart was open, his was guarded, endless criticism and pressure from the monarchy, leaving her broken. Her struggles with bulimia and depression, often misunderstood or ignored. Her dream of a marriage built on love, turning into duty and emptiness. And above all, her fierce desire to protect William and Harry from growing up in a house without love. Diana chose freedom, not just for herself, but for her sons, and in those final 7 months of her life, she showed the world who she truly was. A woman of courage, a mother of love, a princess of the people. Her story, in those last months, became a journey that touched the world forever. In February, Diana showed the world that she didn't need palaces to be a princess. She was at her best when she was with ordinary people, sitting by hospital beds, hugging the sick, and listening to those who had no voice. She broke barriers the monarchy had built for centuries. While others wore gloves, Diana reached out with bare hands. She touched patients with HIV and AIDS at a time when the world was still gripped by fear. To Diana, they weren't cases, they were people. People who deserved love, compassion, and dignity. Every smile she gave carried a message. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. Diana wasn't just visiting hospitals. She was changing hearts. In a world that often turned away from suffering, she leaned in closer. And that's what made her different. That's what made her unforgettable. In February, Diana reminded the world what kind of princess she truly was. Not one of castles and crowns, but one of people. She moved through hospital wards like she belonged there, not as a visitor, but as a friend. Nurses remember how she never rushed. If a child wanted to show her a drawing, she sat and admired it. If a mother wanted to cry, Diana held her hand until the tears stopped. She hugged children living with cancer. She listened to men and women fighting HIV when others still kept their distance. One nurse recalled how Diana pulled up a chair, sat eye to eye with a patient, and spoke to him as if he were family. No cameras, no script, just real, human connection. In one visit, she surprised staff by slipping off her shoes and sitting cross-legged on the floor to play with children. The room filled with laughter, the kind of laughter that lingers long after someone leaves. Diana's message was simple. Your pain matters, your story matters, you matter. And in those quiet meetings, away from headlines and speeches, she became not just the Princess of Wales, but the Princess of Hearts. February 1997. By now, Diana was no longer defined by palaces or titles. The divorce had stripped her of the word Her Royal Highness. But what she lost in status, she gained in freedom. And she used that freedom to be closer to people than ever before. Where others kept their distance, Diana leaned in. Her schedule was filled with visits to hospitals, shelters, and charities. But to her, these weren't duties. They were lifelines. Moments where she felt most alive. She would walk into a hospital ward, and the atmosphere would change instantly. Nurses say patients who hadn't smiled in weeks lit up when Diana entered the room. She didn't just glance and move on. She stopped, listened, laughed, and sometimes even cried with them. One little boy with cancer once whispered to her, "Will you come back tomorrow?" Diana knelt beside him, kissed his forehead, and said softly, "If I could, I'd never leave you." Moments like that didn't make the news, but they made history in hearts. Her work with AIDS patients continued to shatter taboos. In a world still full of fear and stigma, she showed by example that compassion is stronger than prejudice. People remember how she pulled up a chair, sat at the bedside of a man living with HIV, and spoke to him for nearly an hour. No rush, no fear, just dignity. In another visit, Diana surprised staff by kicking off her shoes and sitting cross-legged on the floor to play with children. For those kids, it was NT. A princess came to visit. It was a friend came to play. That was her gift. She turned formality into family. Even at charity galas where the spotlight was bright, Diana always found her way to the back of the room, chatting with the cooks, the servers, the volunteers who worked quietly behind the scenes. She believed kindness wasn't just for the cameras. It belonged everywhere. And everywhere she went, people said the same thing. She looked right at me. She made me feel like I mattered. February wasn't about grand speeches or political battles. It was about something far more powerful, the human touch. In those moments, Diana showed the world that you don't need a throne to change lives. You just need a heart willing to listen. March 1997. For Diana, it was a month of family, faith, and a journey far from home. Early in the month, she stood proudly inside the Church of England as her eldest son, Prince William, was confirmed. She was no longer a royal wife, stripped of titles like Her Royal Highness, but she was still a mother before anything else. She smiled gently as William took this step of faith, her hand resting on his shoulder, her eyes never leaving him. She wanted her boys to grow with strength, kindness, and values that had nothing to do with palaces or crowns. That day was personal, a reminder that her greatest title was simply being mom. Only a few days later, Diana boarded a plane and flew south, to Cape Town, South Africa, to spend time with her brother Charles Spencer. The journey was meant to be partly private, a time to rest, to breathe in new air after months of public intensity. But it soon became something unforgettable. On March 17th, Diana drove to the home of Nelson Mandela. The world watched as two icons of compassion met for the very first time. She arrived in a soft green summer dress, short sleeves, and a light, open neckline. Elegant but simple, perfectly in tune with the warm Cape Town sun. Mandela greeted her warmly at his residence, Genadendal, with that unmistakable smile that made the world feel lighter. They laughed as they shook hands, and the photographs captured not stiff formality, but to people genuinely happy in each other's company. Inside, the atmosphere was gentle and relaxed. There were no royal protocols, no heavy ceremony. Diana and Mandela sat together like old friends. He teased lightly that it wasn't often he met princesses, and she laughed, her whole face lighting up. They spoke about the causes close to their hearts. The suffering caused by AIDS, the desperate need for compassion in a world often ruled by fear. Diana told him about her visits to hospitals, about holding the hands of patients that so many others avoided. Mandela listened closely, nodding, and he praised her bravery in making compassion visible. They shared tea together at a simple wooden table, perhaps rooibos, with the warm, earthy fragrance filling the room. Some recall she tried small local snacks, bread, fruit, a taste of the everyday South African table. It wasn't about the food, though. It was about the ease of the moment. She wasn't a guest of state. She was just Diana, a woman of heart, speaking to a man who had endured and overcome more than most could imagine. Before she left, they exchanged small gifts, tokens of respect. Diana brought a present, something thoughtful for Mandela's family, and in return he offered her a simple gift from South Africa, a gesture of gratitude and friendship. It wasn't the objects that mattered but the meaning, to people, both symbols of hope in their own way, affirming each other's humanity. The meeting lasted about an hour, but its impact stretched far beyond. When Diana stepped back into the Cape Town sunshine, You could see the calm in her face, the quiet glow of someone who had just been in the presence of greatness, and yet she too carried greatness in her own gentle way. She spent several days in South Africa, staying near her brother's home, finding both rest and purpose. She moved through Cape Town with the same grace she carried everywhere, a figure at once familiar and yet still surprising in her warmth. For the world, it was another set of photographs. For Diana, it was a memory etched into her heart, laughter with Mandela, stories shared over tea, and the feeling of belonging in a place far from Britain, far from royal obligations. March was not about palaces or protocols. It was about being a mother at her son's side, and about sitting in the home of a man who had once been a prisoner and was now a president. It was about connection, about truth, about compassion. Diana walked away from South Africa with renewed strength, her stride steadier, her heart louder. She was no longer just the Princess of Wales. She was the people's princess. And in every room she entered, whether a church, a hospital, or the home of Nelson Mandela, she made people feel seen, heard, and valued. April came with new light in Diana's life. She was no longer bound by the routine of palace duties. Instead, every day was shaped by choices she made for herself, for her charities, and for her boys. This was Diana's spring, a season where she began to step out as an independent woman, confident, radiant, and freer than the world had ever seen her before. She attended charity events in elegant, simple dresses, pastel suits, soft blues, and creams that caught the sun but never overshadowed her warmth. At a gala dinner, she walked into the room not with the stiffness of a royal, but with the grace of a woman at ease in her own skin. Guests remembered how she always drifted toward the quiet corners of the hall, seeking out the volunteers, the waiters, the ones who weren't in the spotlight. She spoke to them with the same attention she gave to presidents and stars. That was her gift, to make every single person feel like they mattered. In April, her focus on hospitals deepened. She visited children's wards again, her laughter filling rooms where silence had lingered too long. One nurse later recalled how Diana sat for nearly an hour by a child's bed, gently stroking the girl's hand, asking about her favorite toys and her dreams. Cameras waited outside, but Diana didn't hurry. She never did. Her own life was also shifting quietly. She began to travel more freely, to explore new friendships, to embrace evenings where she could slip away from London's formality and enjoy a meal without protocol. At one private dinner she wore a simple black dress, hair tucked back casually, and those who were there remembered how much she laughed. The kind of laughter that comes when someone is finally starting to breathe again after years of being held too tightly. And always, in the background, her thoughts circled back to William and Harry. April meant school breaks, and Diana was often seen slipping away to spend time with them. Quiet days, mother and sons, away from the press. She wanted them to feel normal, to ride bikes, to laugh loudly, to eat pizza at the table without a royal guard watching. Her boys were her anchor, and everything else in her life moved around that center. April wasn't dramatic, but it was meaningful. It was the steady building of Diana's new identity, no longer just a princess in name, but a woman of her own making. Each charity visit, each kind word, each choice of a simple suit over a glittering crown was Diana quietly telling the world, "This is who I am now." And the world was listening. June began with magic. One evening at the Royal Albert Hall, Diana arrived for the ballet, Swan Lake. She loved the ballet, but this night was different. She seemed lighter, radiant, almost ethereal. In her pale blue gown, she glided into the hall, her presence turning heads, her smile warm but a little wistful. Inside, she leaned forward in her seat, clapping softly, her eyes sparkling as the dancers told the story of love, betrayal, and beauty. Many whispered that the role of the Swan Queen mirrored Diana herself, graceful, vulnerable, yet full of strength. Later, she was presented with a set of pearls by Garrett, a necklace designed just for her. She accepted it with quiet joy, not knowing it would become one of the last pieces ever made for her. A gentle shift in music, auction room buzz, Christie's in New York, rows of glittering gowns displayed like treasures. Only days later, Diana shocked the world again. She put 79 of her most famous dresses up for auction at Christie's in New York. Dresses she had worn 2 banquets, 2 state dinners, 2 dances with presidents and kings. These gowns carried memories of another life, one she was now leaving behind. She said the money would go to cancer and AIDS charities, but it was more than generosity. It was a release, a way of saying, I am no longer tied to the past. I am moving forward. One by one, the dresses sold, millions of dollars raised. People described the auction as a fairy tale, letting go of itself, a princess giving away her gowns so that hope could be stitched into the lives of those who needed it most. In Washington, Diana was welcomed like family. She visited the White House, walking with First Lady Hillary Clinton, her smile wide, her energy alive. The two women shared stories, laughter, and the quiet weight of knowing what it was like to live in the spotlight. Judged not just as women, but as symbols. Later that week, Diana spoke about her causes in America, her words direct, simple, and deeply human. She told audiences about the children she had seen, the patients others had forgotten, and the landmines still waiting in silent fields across the world. She did not speak as a politician. She spoke as a mother, as a woman who could not walk away from pain once she had seen it. Diana sits in a simple chair, wearing a black dress by Catherine Walker. Her smile is calm, her eyes clear, and then, Vanity Fair. Her last great photo shoot, the images by Mario Testino, showed Diana as she was in June 1997, free, elegant, but above all, human. No crown, no palace, no husband. Just Diana, a woman reborn, her spirit shining in every frame. These photographs circled the world, capturing her at the very moment she seemed to be stepping into her own future. A future she would never fully reach. June was not just a month. It was a turning point. A season of goodbyes and beginnings, of grace and strength. A month where Diana told the world, without ever needing to say it, that her story was hers now, and that her heart would always belong to the people. May carried Diana across continents. First, to Pakistan, a country she had grown to love, and where her heart was tied to a cause bigger than herself. She was there to support her friend Imran Khan and his wife Jemima, raising funds for the cancer hospital that Imran had built in memory of his mother. Crowds gathered to see her, but Diana's eyes always searched for the smallest faces. At the hospital in Lahore, she bent down to meet children undergoing treatment. She asked their names, their favorite colors, even what cartoons they liked. Her soft laughter filled those wards, and for a moment, the beeping machines and whispered prayers faded away. She wore traditional clothes, light cottons, soft blues, creams, and pale pinks. Simple, yet graceful, blending respect with her natural elegance. It wasn't just clothing. It was a sign of the respect she carried for the culture and the people she met. Clips of Diana sitting beside Jemima Khan, holding her baby on her lap, smiling warmly as cameras flashed. Outside the hospital, Diana spent time with Jemima and her little boy, a princess cradling another woman's baby with tenderness as if he were her own. It was a scene that captured her essence, always a mother, always nurturing, whether it was her son's or a stranger's child. But Pakistan wasn't just public appearances. Behind closed doors, Diana attended small charity dinners, intimate gatherings where she quietly urged donors to support Imran's hospital. She didn't give long speeches. She spoke simply, from her heart, about the children she had seen, about their need for hope. That honesty moved people in ways no politics ever could. The sound of London traffic fades in, Diana stepping out of a car in a pale blue suit, holding a charity brochure. Back in London, May was filled with more causes. She attended fundraisers for cancer research, HIV awareness, and children's charities, always in understated elegance. A tailored suit here, a soft evening gown there. Diana knew her presence could turn attention into action. At one gala, instead of mingling with the wealthiest guests, she slipped away to sit with volunteers, asking them about their daily work. A photographer later said, "She had a gift. She made you forget she was Diana, Princess of Wales. You felt like you were with a friend." Yet May also carried whispers of change in her personal life. With her divorce behind her, people watched closely who she dined with, who she spoke to, where she went. Diana remained graceful, but you could sense it. The weight of the cameras, the curiosity, the constant hum of a world desperate to know every detail of her private heart. And through it all, her grounding force was William and Harry. She phoned them daily, arranging time to see them between travels. She told friends she worried about how much they were growing without her by their side, but she also said she was determined to teach them one thing above all else: kindness. May was not just another month, it was Diana bridging worlds, east and west, public and private, a princess and a mother, a campaigner and a woman searching for her own peace. Each day added another thread to the tapestry of her final summer. July was a month of sunshine. Diana wanted one thing above all else: time with her boys. She accepted the invitation of Mohammed Al-Fayed, who welcomed her and her sons to his villa in St. Tropez for a few precious days. She was not the most photographed woman in the world. She was simply Mum. She swam with William and Harry in the Mediterranean, chasing them into the waves, her laughter ringing over the water. On the yacht, she lay in the sun with a paperback in hand, glancing up every few seconds just to watch her sons play. She helped them build sandcastles on the beach, shielding their faces from cameras when she noticed the long lenses hidden in the dunes. But even in paradise, she could not escape the press. Boats circled at a distance, photographers hid in trees. Every smile, every hug, every moment of peace was stolen and sold to the world. Diana told a friend later that month, "They never let us just be." Soft guitar music. Diana seated at a candlelit dinner table, laughing across from Dodi Fayed, Mohammed's son, his eyes warm, his manner gentle. It was here that her friendship with Dodi Fayed began to grow. They talked for hours, about films, about travel, about life away from duty. She found in him a kindness, a gentleness that made her feel at ease. For once, someone wasn't asking for anything from her. He was simply present. The newspapers soon spun their stories. Rumors of romance, whispers of scandal. Diana stayed silent. For her, these moments were not about headlines. They were about healing, about discovering what happiness might look like if she allowed herself to reach for it. Even on holiday, her heart never left her causes. She took calls with charity workers, checking progress on campaigns. She spoke to her staff about the upcoming landmine conference she was preparing for. And at night, after the boys had gone to bed, she sat under the stars and wrote letters, thank you notes to hospitals, replies to children who had written to her, words of encouragement to those who needed to feel seen, photographers shouting her name, Diana shielding her face as she boards a boat with her sons. But the peace of St. Tropez could not last. The paparazzi grew more aggressive. They followed the family by car, by boat, even by helicopter. Every smile with her sons became a photograph. Every glance toward Dodi became a headline. July was golden, full of warmth, laughter, and the sweetness of stolen moments. But beneath it all, a storm was brewing. The world was watching too closely, too hungrily. And as Diana's summer unfolded, the line between her private joy and the public's obsession grew thinner by the day. August, the last month of her journey. Diana began it in the south of France, returning once again to St. Tropez. William and Harry were with her, and for a little while, she was simply a mother at play. She rode jet skis with them, laughed until her cheeks hurt, and dived into the warm waters, her arms wrapped around her boys. Those were her happiest moments. Not the galas or the spotlights, but the ordinary laughter of children who only saw her as Mum. When the boys returned to Charles, Diana's summer took a different shape. Dodi Fayed invited her to Sardinia on his family's yacht. Here, she found a quiet companionship, long dinners under the stars, talks about the future, sunlit afternoons stretched out on deck chairs. For once, she seemed to be allowing herself to imagine a new chapter, one that was hers, and hers alone. But the cameras never let her be. Helicopters roared overhead, speedboats trailed behind. Every smile was captured, magnified, sold. Diana later said to a friend, "I just want peace. Just one day without being hunted." Paris streets at night. Headlights, rain glistening on the pavement. At the end of August, she flew to Paris. By then, the world's attention was feverish. Crowds waited outside the Ritz Hotel, shouting her name, cameras flashing like lightning. Inside, Diana and Dodi dined quietly. Witnesses say she seemed tired, but still graceful, still carrying that aura that never left her. Then came the drive, past midnight. A Mercedes leaving the Ritz, Pursued by photographers on motorbikes, the car entered the Ponte la Lama tunnel. And in a moment, everything changed. On August 31st, 1997, Diana, Princess of Wales, was gone. The world stopped. Strangers wept as though they had lost family. Millions left flowers at her palace gates. Children who had never met her drew pictures and tucked them into bouquets. Grown men cried openly in the streets. It wasn't just the death of a princess. It was the loss of something deeper. A woman who had made people feel seen, who had touched the untouchable, who had shown the world that kindness could be powerful. Many years have passed, yet Diana's story is still told. Not because of the tragedy, but because of the love she carried into every room, every handshake, every embrace. She was called the People's Princess. But more than that, she became a piece of people's hearts. And hearts don't forget, not after years, not after decades. Diana lives on, not in the titles she once held, but in the way she made the world feel.